The Force and the Dark Side. I don't know if anyone will ever read this, for the simple fact that I'm not sure I can corral my thoughts enough to be comprehensible, but here goes. Upon watching the final installment of George Lucas's Star Wars Revenge of the Sith, it struck me how similar in theme it was to Mel Gibson's The Passion of the Christ. Now, stay with me here. I'm not totally insane. You see, in The Passion, Christ faces a decision. Will it be worth it to stay true to his soul and his God, even if that means losing his physical life in order to save everyone he loves, us, from the power of evil? In Revenge of the Sith, Anakin too faces a decision. Will it be worth it to trade his soul, and maybe even his life, to evil in order to save someone he loves? The goal is the same, to save those you love. The paths couldn't be more different, nor could the outcomes. It is said that the devil doesn't have to convince you. All he has to do is confuse you to throw you off track. This idea is played out masterfully in Revenge. Anakin is pulled in different directions by nearly everyone: the Jedi Knights, Padme, and especially Darth Sidious, the Chancellor. The Chancellor uses his time with Anakin to float trial balloons of confusion into the young man's mind. Some good, a way to save Padme; some bad, the Jedi are dishonorable; some just plain confusing. They have asked you to spy on me, haven't they? Plagued by nightmares of losing the one he loves, and not at all sure where the truth or anyone's real motives lie, Anakin listens to the Chancellor just enough to let himself become confused. Is the dark side he's always heard about really dark? Or is it just something you can play for a while and then turn from when you want? Can you use it for your benefit and not have it infiltrate your soul? I believe it is Anakin's original intent to do just that. Use the dark side enough to gain what he wants and then go back to the life of honor. Of course, it doesn't work that way. Nonetheless, I believe Padme at the end when she says, "There's still some good in him." There is, but his mind has been twisted to the point that he can't figure out what's good and what's bad. He can't figure out who to believe and why. The Jedi are suspicious of him for reasons neither they nor he can really explain. The Chancellor is offering him the power to save the one he loves. The Jedi are saying, "You are not to love anybody." The Chancellor is asking him to spy. Padme is begging him to make everything right. Even the Jedi Knight he looks up to and respects the most, Obi-Wan, unknowingly adds seeds of distrust and confusion into the young man's mind by asking him to spy on the Chancellor and then showing up on Padme's ship. By the middle of the movie, even the watcher in the seats is confused. Whom to believe? Whom to trust? Whom to turn to, because no one seems wholly without motive to use Anakin as nothing more than a pawn? Why did this happen? How did Anakin get stretched in so many different directions? Because he allowed himself to listen to the evil singing so sweetly in his ear in the first place, and because he stopped listening to the Force altogether. As he stood with the lightsabers on either side of Count Dooku's head, he listened to the Chancellor telling him that killing someone would be all right. He went against all his Jedi Knight training, the teachings of the Force. In that moment, he gave in to the desire for revenge and the hatred he had for Dooku, and in the split second that Dooku's head was removed from his body, Anakin turned his allegiance to the dark side. Instantly, he is confused. Instantly, he says, "What have I done? That's not the way of the Jedi." And the Chancellor smiles with insidious delight. Anakin has taken his first step to the dark side. With that killing on Anakin's conscience, the Chancellor can now twist and turn the knife any way he wants it to go. Thus, Anakin becomes first a confused and then a willing pawn in the cruel and evil web of deceit spun by the Chancellor. To make matters worse, Anakin believes he has to do it all on his own. He trusts no one, save Padme, and even she has to drag every bit of information about what was really going on out of him. He wraps himself in his own understanding of the world, which was really very limited, and he makes the decision that his power is enough. To further this already unwise aim of doing it by himself, he seeks to know more about the Force and the dark side. In other words, he wanted to taste the knowledge of good and evil. He wanted to play God. No, he wanted to be God. He wanted to be able to give Padme back her life if his nightmares came true. Rather than trusting in the Force, he convinced himself that the Force could not help him. He had to help him. He was on his own. And so, by the advice of the Chancellor that in order to be powerful enough to bring Padme back to life, he had to grab power however and wherever he could, Anakin began to do just that. Thus, with a baby of his own on the way, he walks in and wipes out a small army of unarmed Jedi younglings. If he is to wipe the Jedi out, it is important that he pull the Order up from the roots to ensure that the Jedi will be no more. He accomplishes this by killing all of the younglings that would one day become Jedi Knights. This scene also holds deeper a truth in that, up until this point, everyone Anakin has killed is someone unlike himself, someone old, some enemy outside himself, or someone he has convinced himself was an enemy. However, when the lead youngling steps out from behind the council chair, this child very much resembles Anakin as a child. Physically, they are very similar, but more importantly, emotionally, they are similar. Out of all the younglings, this one appears to be the leader. He steps out, and the others follow. He is the one who addresses Anakin with the plea that they are afraid because everyone has left, embodying, of course, Anakin's own struggles as a child when his mother died and he was abandoned. However, Anakin, in his by now all-consuming hatred and fury, ignites his lightsaber to kill this youngling, which so symbolizes the killing of his own innocence. With that deed, he kills any hope he has of ever going back. What follows is a rampage that gets ever more vicious with each passing scene. He continues to annihilate other Jedi Knights, who led him in thinking him their friend. But he is no longer anyone's friend, least of all his own. The more he kills, the more horrific his features and heart become, and the more heartless and cruel his actions become. With his innocence gone, he is no longer confused about his turn to the dark side. He embraces it full on and begins to believe it really will lead him to everything he has so wanted in his life: safety, security, power, pride, until finally he meets again with the one he loves, the one whom he has done all this power-grabbing to save. And what happens? She senses the terrible change that's come over him. She sees what embracing the dark side has done to him, and although it breaks her heart to leave him, she cannot live with the evil he has become. So here he is. He has done all of this for her, and she rejects him. Of course, by now he thinks he can make anyone do anything he wants, so in his anger he puts a death grip on her. Struggling to free herself, Padme finds she cannot get out of his clutches until Anakin's old master, Obi-Wan, steps in and saves her just before she is killed. By this point, Anakin has so turned his soul to the dark side that even Padme's love and life means nothing to him. If she is not willing to love him, then he does not love her. It is an action born of hurt and fear, but it exacts a toll on her body that will ultimately ensure her death. Translated, Anakin's total embrace of the dark side convinces him that exacting revenge on Padme is within his rights, because he's mad at her. The dark side has so blinded him that he can kill even the one he professed to love, thus forever locking the grip that hatred and fear and torment will have on his soul from that point forward, because he could kill even her. Of course, there ensues the epic battle between Obi-Wan and Anakin in the lava pit that to me verily reeked of hell itself. In fact, just prior to Anakin shaking Padme lifeless in a death grip, he tells her that they can stay here and rule over all of this. Great idea. Just where I want to stay and raise my kids. I wonder if he realizes as she is backing away that he made a wrong turn somewhere on the road. If he does realize that, the realization is quickly consumed with his anger at her backing away in horror. In fact, you can almost see it in his grotesquely evil glare. No, I didn't make a wrong turn. You did, and now you're going to pay. In the end, Anakin is burned by the hell he has chosen. How did his choices lead him here? They led him here because not only did he steadfastly refuse to let go of anything, he also refused to trust anyone other than himself. The Jedi said he could not wed. He wed anyway. The Jedi said to be patient and wait for his time to become a master. He didn't want to wait. He wanted that distinction now. At every turn, Anakin chose himself over the Force. At every turn, he relied on his own understanding of the situation, rather than on listening to the Force. In short, choosing the dark side is choosing to rely on oneself, to hang on to everything you can possibly grab, to deem everyone else expendable in your quest for what you want, however noble it seems at the time. That's the insidiousness of the dark side. It sounds so good and right when it's whispering sweetness in your ear. Now contrast this tragedy with the triumph of Christ in the Passion. Throughout that movie, the things Christ loves the most are stripped away. He loses his friends because they run away. He loses his freedom. He is in shackles and chains. He loses his body as it is ripped, torn, and shredded. He loses the love of people he had cured and healed. He loses his strength as he is forced up Calvary under the burden of the cross. He loses his clothing to the soldiers and his dignity to the wind. In the end, he even loses the one he loves the most in this world, his mother. He gives her into the care of someone else, loving her and wanting her to be safe, even if he couldn't be there to see that. And he lets them all go with the heart-wrenching understanding that they were never his in the first place. In that film, Christ gave up everything, even his life, for the love of everyone, even those who hated him so fiercely. More to the point, he surrendered absolutely everything to God. Why? Because at every turn he refused to listen to the evil one whispering lies into his ears. He refused to rely on his own strength. Instead, he repeatedly called out to God for strength. He didn't try to do it on his own because he knew he couldn't. He didn't cry out to understand more about why they were intent on killing him. He didn't thirst for the knowledge of good and evil. That didn't matter. He thirsted for God and only God. He chose the tree of life, the tree that ensures that God is with you no matter what horrible events the world throws at you. Anakin chose the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. He chose to rely on himself, and because he bought into the lie that he could do it himself, he lost everything. He lost the life he had been building. He lost Padme. He lost his very soul. That choice is what turned him into Darth Vader. Choosing yourself is the way to the dark side. Choosing to rely on yourself is the dark side. Why? Because in the fog of now, it's too easy to get confused. In the smoke and mirrors of who said what to whom, when, truth and right get really hard to find. And confusion is the devil's first line of offense. If he can get you confused, he's got a much better shot at taking you down a road you really don't want to be on. The solution, if you haven't figured it out already, is to put your life into the hands of someone who sees the whole situation for what it really is, and let him, God/the Force, make your decisions. This someone not only sees the pieces of the puzzle you can't see, he sees into the very heart of each and every one of the players. He knows when you're taking a wrong turn, when you are listening to the wrong person, and if you're listening to him, he will lead you back onto the path of right. He sees it all with perfect clarity. And even when the journey leads through the valley of death, he is at your side at every step. So the question is, are you listening to him like Christ did? Or are you wallowing in your own pit of the knowledge of good and evil, trying desperately to figure it out for yourself? Be careful that choice. One side leads to the resurrection and heaven itself. The other leads to a hell of unmentionable proportions. 2005.
Reflections on Life, written by Staci Stallings. Copyright Staci Stallings 2005. Narrated by Michaela Acker. Production copyright Staci Stallings 2023. Like and subscribe to the Staci Stallings YouTube channel so you never miss a second of the story.